Alright, so now that we talked about the Microsoft Edge browser, now let's turn our attention to Internet Explorer, which has been around for quite some time. A lot of people, off of first glance, they're going to think that the icon down here is for Internet Explorer, but it is in fact for Microsoft Edge, as you can see, as it tells us right now if we just let the mouse hover over it. And even if we go to the Start menu, you'll notice that we have under Life at a Glance area, Microsoft Edge. You're not going to see Internet Explorer in here, but it is installed. And so if we just type in Internet Explorer, you'll notice that it is installed. So we'll click on that to open it up, and we are in Internet Explorer. Now, just like with Edge, we're going to talk about how we can identify if a website is using HTTPS. And remember back from your basic networking understandings and networking course that HTTP and HTTPS, well, HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. I'm not sure if I said that in the last video, but I just wanted to make sure I said that. And then if we add the S onto it, which is a different protocol, that's going to be Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. That's either using SSL or TLS as a way to encrypt the data. So remember, just like with Edge, there's going to be that lock icon. Well, we're on MSN's website, and let's go ahead and refresh this. And you're going to notice that this uses our basic HTTP, so it's not secure. Just a basic HTTP protocol sends everything over the wire, and when I say over the wire, over a network, or over the internet, in clear text, so it's not encrypted. It goes through in plain text. But if we go to a website that does have HTTPS as its protocol for that website, so let's go to Facebook, which I know uses HTTPS. You're going to notice we see it here, and then we get this lock icon box that we can click on as well, and it tells us that it's encrypted. So again, just like with Edge, it's very easy to see if a website is using HTTP or HTTP secure. And so that's how you can tell if the data is going to be encrypted or not on that website. Okay, so with that said, now let's look at our internet options. We can either do this from the browser, or we can do it from Control Panel, or simply search for it. The way to do it from the browser, the easy way, is click on the little cog icon over here on the right, which is for the tools. Go down to Internet Options, and you're going to get this pop-up. And here's all the different options for Internet Explorer. And like I said, a lot more detailed and granular than Microsoft Edge. Now, if we want to get to it without the browser open, we can go to Control Panel and do it, or we can simply just type it in down here. And there it is. Open it up, and we're back into it. So we're just going to do our demonstration from here. One thing that I do want to note is that because there's a lot of information that I think you're going to need to know for the certification in the internet options on the various tabs, is that I create a resource PDF to help you memorize the basic information that you're going to need to know. So you can either pause this video and print it out now, or just print it out afterwards, and as you're doing your own walkthrough and playing around with Edge and Internet Explorer and looking at the different settings, then you'll have it available. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is there's one thing on the General tab that I want to talk about, and it has to deal with privacy, and that's the browsing history. So you can delete your browsing history, such as your temporary files, your history information, your cookies, your passwords, your web form information, and so forth, just by clicking on here under Delete. And it'll give you a pop-up, and you can pick or choose what you want to delete. So it gives you all the options here. We'll go ahead and click Delete, and it'll delete everything in regards to what we wanted it to delete. And if we want our browser to delete everything every time we close it, we can click this as well. So now let's go to the Security tab, which is really the meat and potatoes of what we want to discuss. So in terms of what I've seen in my studies and in these exams, and when I say these exams, the official exam and practice exams that I've taken, and even in the Network Fundamentals MTA exam, they go over these different zones as well. So there are 4 different security zones for Microsoft's internet browser, specifically Internet Explorer. There's the Internet zone, the local intranet zone, the trusted site zone, and the restricted site zone. And in the printout, this is going to be available, screenshot of this. What you want to know with these are what the zones are, what their purpose is, which is listed down below each of them, what their default zone is set up for. And so you're going to see as we go through these, they have different zones that they're set up for, and if they use protected mode or not by default. So the internet zone, well, as its name implies, it's designed for sites that are on the internet, except for those that we place in our local intranet and our trusted zones. So anything on the internet, except for those that we explicitly list in here, are going to be in the internet zone. And by default, it's set at a level of medium high, and it uses something called protected mode, which, just like with the Edge browser where they have the smart screen filter, Internet Explorer has a protected mode, which is very similar. It's going to help protect you from malicious sites that potentially are phishing sites or have malware, and it's going to protect you from being infected by looking at a database and seeing if any of those sites match that. If it detects some sort of a potential malware download, it's going to stop it and prompt you as well. So again, it's just a way to help protect your computer. So anything that is not listed as local intranet or trusted, and it's on the internet, it's going to be medium high, and protected mode is going to be enabled. Now, with all of these zones, there's something called a custom level, and we'll go over this last. But essentially what you can do is you can modify this level. So I can modify medium high. If I change it, I can modify one of the other zones as well. But with internet, you're going to notice the default is medium high. We can go up to high, and we can go down to medium, but we can't go any further down. So let's take a look at the local intranet zone. The local intranet zone is for all websites that are within your intranet. So again, remember, an intranet is a site, a website, or a series of websites that are designed to be used within your intranet, within your local area network. So not outside your local area network, but it's a trusted website within your local area network. And by default, it's set at medium low. And in terms of the different sites, we can add them in, or we can have it try to auto-detect it. And you'll notice that protected mode is not enabled for local intranet, because we really shouldn't have to worry about it. Because if we're thinking about this, if we work for business and we're browsing the company's intranet, well, we should trust it. So we shouldn't have to worry about phishing sites and sites with malicious code in them on our own website, our own internal employee website. So there's really no need for protected mode. So if we click on sites here, you're going to notice a couple of things. We can have it automatically try to detect our intranet, or we can click on advanced and we can explicitly tell it what websites are in this zone. So let's say, for example, that alnet.local is going to be the name of our intranet website for our, let's just say, our domain. So let's say we set up Active Directory, and that's going to be our domain. That's also going to be the domain name for our intranet. So we'll just say alnet.local is going to be our intranet site. So whenever we go to alnet.local in our web server, in Internet Explorer, and it goes to the web server on our local area network for our intranet, then it's going to say, okay, well, alnet.local is part of the local intranet zone. And so in terms of the security level for Internet Explorer, it's going to be on medium low, and protected mode is disabled. So that's local intranet. The next one is trusted sites. And trusted sites is for websites on the internet that you trust. Websites that you trust that won't damage your computer. So let's get back to alnet.local. Let's say we also have a website called alnet.com, which is our public-facing website. Well, we trust that as well. So we would go ahead and add it in here. And by default, just like local intranet, there's nothing in here. By default, it's empty. But we're going to go ahead and add it in. And because I have require server verification, in other words, require HTTPS, if that is enabled, we would have to ensure that this is HTTPS. Let's say that it's not. Let's just say that's HTTP. So let's go ahead and just type in the whole thing. and click add, and there you go. There's HTTP : and actually misspelled that. There should be 3 W's here, so let's go ahead and just put alnet.com. And there we go. And again, by default, so for trusted sites, security level is medium, but you'll notice that it's higher than local intranet, even though we trust it. So why is it higher? Why is this lower and why is this higher? So we go from medium low, and then for trusted sites we go to medium, then for internet we go up one more to medium high, and then finally we haven't covered restricted sites yet, then we go to high, and we'll talk about this in a minute. So why is trusted sites higher than local intranet, even though we say we trust them and we're not doing protected mode? Well, it's because they're on the internet, and so they're a higher risk to us personally than a local intranet site, because there are malicious users on the internet, and there are attacks that they can use, such as a man-in-the-middle attack or replay attack, that can exploit weaknesses on these websites. And so we have to consider those, and so it makes sense that it's a little bit higher of a security zone than a local intranet, even though local internet is for sites that we trust. Just because we trust them doesn't mean we can trust the internet and everything else out there, and so it needs to be a little higher. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about restricted sites. Restricted sites are websites that you don't trust, websites that are going to potentially have malicious data, malicious content on them, and by default, they're set at high for this zone, so the level's set at high and you cannot change it. It's grayed out. You can't reduce it down lower. In terms of the different levels, let me go back to trusted sites. We can go all the way from high. There's medium high, which is what the internet is. There's medium, which is the default for trusted sites. There's medium low, which is for local intranet. And then the lowest level security is low, which is not the default for any of these. So with local intranet and trusted sites, we can pick or choose any of these different security levels. But for restricted, and let me just make sure I reset this back to the defaults for this demonstration. For restricted, it's set at high and you cannot change it. And you're going to notice, of course, protected mode is enabled, because let's say that we work for Symantec or Avast or one of these antivirus companies, and we do research by going to the dark web and looking on sites that may have malicious code as part of our job. Well, we're going to want to put these sites in a restricted zone, and we're going to make sure that protected mode is enabled. And the way that we put a site into here is we click on sites just like we did for trusted sites, and we would add them into here. So by default, nothing's in here. You have to add them. So we'll just say, darkweb.org. I just made that up, but let's assume that this is a potential site that has malicious code on it. We're going to want to go ahead and add it to there, so it's added to this, so we get this level of security. And so that's restricted site. So again, just recapping, the highest level of security is going to be restricted with high, and you can't change it, you can't reduce it down. Then we go to internet, which is still an area that we don't trust, but we don't know if the sites are going to have malicious code or not, so this is going to be medium high in protected mode. And then out on the internet, we have our trusted sites on the internet that we trust, that we add to this zone, and by default it's going to be at a medium security level, no protected mode, and then the zone that we trust the most, our local intranet, so it's going to be medium low without protected mode enabled. Okay, so that was a lot, and that's why I said there's a resource guide for this that I want you to reference. Now with all 4 of these, you're going to notice that there is something called a custom level. So what is a custom level? So for any of these levels, high, medium, medium low, or low, what we can do is we can modify this zone or this level of security for this zone. So if I click on here, there are all sorts of options where we can enable and disable or prompt for a user action or confirmation. And you don't need to know everything in here, but you need to know that you can edit any of these zones. So for example, with restricted, even though we can't take something out of the high zone, we can modify it. So we can potentially modify it so it's not as secure as the default settings. And you're going to notice that a lot of things are disabled in here. And if we start enabling them, then it's going to decrease how secure it is. So just understand that you can modify those levels. So that's the security tab in Internet Explorer Internet Options area. Now let's take a look at the privacy tab. The privacy tab is a lot simpler, and there's not as much information. And what we're going to look at is a couple of different things. We're going to click on here under sites, and this will allow us to manage sites in regards to if we allow or don't allow that site to track our cookies. So within here, you can specify which websites are allowed or never allowed to use cookies. And we can either block the site from using cookies or tracking us with their cookies, or we can implicitly allow them. So we can do that here with our cookies, and then with our pop-up blocker we can do a very similar thing. So with the pop-up blocker, you'll notice that it says pop-ups are currently blocked because we have it enabled here, and it says you can allow pop-ups from specific websites by adding them to this list. So let's say that I wanted to add alnet.com, and I go ahead and allow it now, and now it should allow pop-ups from that website. There's some more granular settings down here, but we don't need to get into that. And then let's jump over to the content tab real quick. So in regards to encryption and data integrity, there is something called asymmetric encryption, and there are digital certificates that allow for data integrity. Well, websites use digital certificates. We're going to talk about digital certificates and encryption later in this course, but understand that with a digital certificate, we can validate if a website is legit or not. And when I say legit, if we go back to Edge, if I go to google.com and click on this lock icon, you're going to notice that they have a digital certificate here that has been identified. So there's a digital certificate here that tells us that this is a valid website. And so that's the purpose of this. Now, because this is a virtual machine and I haven't done any browsing on it, when I click on certificates, there's only going to be the digital certificate issued to this operating system by this operating system. So if we had used this, if this was your home computer, and if you're looking at this on your computer, you should have several different digital certificates for your home computer. And what you can do is you can double click to open them up, and you can read the details of who it was issued to, by who, and the valid dates for this digital certificate. And you can click on details for more information, but we don't need to know this granular information. So this allows us to manage our certificates. We can import them, we can export them, and we can remove them here. But just understand there's also a tab to manage our digital certificates. And there's some additional tabs on here, such as setting up our VPNs as well if we want to set up a VPN, which does relate to information security and having secure connections over a wide area link to a network using a tunnel and encryption. So we can do that here under the connections tab. But I think that's really all that we need to cover. We're getting close to 20 minutes now, and like I said, there's a lot of information, and we spent a majority of the time here on our security tab really focusing in on our zones and all the details regarding them, because this is what I really wanted you to understand and know, because in my studying for this exam, I saw a lot of information surrounding these zones. So I think it's going to be important that you understand them. Also, make sure you focus in on the protected mode and also the smart screen filter as well for Microsoft Edge. So that's going to conclude this video. Make sure you download the attached resource and use it as a study guide. If you have any questions about this, let me know. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's video and you learned a lot from it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Now, if you're interested in taking this full course or just learning more about it, check out the video description down below, because I've included a link where you can learn more about the course and enroll into it if you'd like. So again, thanks for watching my video. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you guys at the next video. Take care.